Most alternate dimensions in the SCP Foundation are wastelands, or monster factories, or places where reality just gave up, but some of them are broken on a level so fundamental it rewrites what it means to exist. Today I'm explaining every alternate dimension in SCP, and we're starting with one that's missing something you'd never think to worry about. SCP-3001. Red Reality SCP-3001 isn't a universe without a color. It's a dimension where reality itself is almost completely absent. A Hume level so close to zero that nothing should be able to exist there. Just an endless, featureless red void, which is, you know, not ideal. We only know about SCP-3001 because of Dr. Robert Scranton, the guy who invented the Scranton Reality Anchor. A reality anchor malfunction sucked him into this dimension. He didn't find monsters or civilizations. He found nothing. An infinite red-tinted expanse with zero structure and a Hume reading so low his body started breaking down at a molecular level. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Scranton was trapped for what he estimated to be years. His body decayed and disintegrated while he was still conscious. Pieces of him would separate, float nearby, and he could still feel them. He kept audio logs, and you can track his mental state deteriorating entry by entry, from clinical observations to desperate pleas to something that barely qualifies as language. The Foundation recovered the recorder. They never recovered Scranton. No monsters, no traps, no malice, just absence. And that absence destroyed a man more thoroughly than any creature in the Foundation's catalog. But if a near-empty void can do all that, wait until you see what a single red object can do when it opens a door to somewhere much, much worse. SCP-093, Red Sea Object. So SCP-3001 strips away everything until you're nothing. But what if there was a dimension that didn't just erase you, it replaced everything you knew with something worse? And the key to getting there is a stone disc the color of dried blood. SCP-093 is a smooth red disc, about 7.62 centimeters in diameter. Leave it alone and it just sits there, but hold it against a mirror and the mirror becomes a doorway. Step through and you're in a dead world. Churches the size of skyscrapers, empty towns, dust everywhere, and something massive moving in the distance. The Foundation sent multiple teams through. Each test dropped agents into the same ruined civilization but different locations. Every single one told the same story. A deeply religious society that tried to purify itself of sin using something called his holy tears, a substance meant to cleanse the unclean. It transformed people into gigantic lumbering creatures made of fused human bodies, still alive, still wandering the empty countryside. Each test pushed further into the ruins. Agents found propaganda, journals, desperate radio broadcasts, an entire civilization that prayed its way into an extinction event. They begged God to save them, and whatever answered wasn't God. The final test recovered footage of something so large it blocked out the sky. Just a wall of flesh on the horizon, still moving. And the worst part isn't the monsters. It's the realization that the people there did this to themselves, on purpose, with faith. But if a dimension full of fused flesh giants sounds bad, wait until you hear about the one hiding inside a bag of potatoes. SCP-1689, Bag of Potatoes. Okay, so this one sounds like a joke. And honestly, it kind of is. SCP-1689 is a burlap sack that contains an apparently infinite number of potatoes. That's the anomaly, a bag that never runs out. Before you click off, hear me out, because this thing gets dark fast. Reach into the sack and there's always another potato, always. The Foundation kept extracting them for extended periods and the supply never stopped, which is, you know, mildly terrifying when you think about where they're all coming from. Because they are coming from somewhere. Exploration logs revealed that the interior of the sack opens into a massive underground space composed almost entirely of potatoes. Tunnels, caverns, entire geological formations made of compressed tubers. Sounds almost whimsical until you realize the Foundation sent a D-class personnel inside to explore, and the recovered logs describe a sprawling subterranean potato landscape that just keeps going. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. The exploration subject became trapped, couldn't find the way back, communications degraded, the last transmissions described walls closing in, passages collapsing, and the potatoes themselves shifting around him, buried alive in an infinite starch tomb that just kept generating more of itself around a person who could do absolutely nothing about it. The sack sits in a standard containment locker, a burlap bag on a shelf, and somewhere inside it, a dead man is buried under a billion potatoes that will never stop multiplying. cool. That's also a thing that happened, but if an infinite potato hellscape sounds contained, wait until you hear about a hole in the ground that opens into everywhere at once. SCP-1437, a hole to another place. Imagine a sphere floating in mid-air that's bigger on the inside than the outside. Not by a little, by 400%, that's SCP-1437, a 0.76 meter wide void hovering 1.2 meters off the ground that leads to a dimension called the Place, where every period of human history exists at the same time in the same space without touching. Walk inside and you'll see Neolithic huts bleeding into 22nd century skyscrapers, a medieval castle tower growing out of a Soviet apartment block. It's not random, it's organized. By trauma, the entities inside prove it. Picture a World War II tank, but it's wearing medieval knight armor, and it changes shape depending on who's looking at it. The implication is horrifying. This dimension isn't bound by physics, it's bound by collective historical suffering. Reality inside is shaped by humanity's worst moments, stitched together into something that shouldn't exist. Radio contact dies at 98% static beyond 1.5 kilometers. The temperature holds at negative 18.4 degrees Celsius no matter where you are. The air composition shifts between 70% and 95% nitrogen depending on which historical period you're standing in, and 87% of personnel who went in came back with severe dissociative identity disorder. One D class returned with 137% oxygen saturation. That's not possible. He spontaneously combusted the moment he stepped back into our reality. But if you think a dimension made of historical trauma is bad, wait until you see what happens when an entire Foundation site collapses into itself and becomes its own pocket hell. SCP-1730. What happened to Site-13? Most SCPs are things the Foundation contains. SCP-1730 is what happens when the Foundation itself becomes the containment failure. Site-13 didn't just shut down. It appeared out of nowhere in the desert, a massive ruined complex from what seems to be an alternate timeline where the Foundation went full scorched earth. We're talking a version of the Foundation that didn't just contain anomalies, it destroyed them, and then it destroyed itself in the process. But the ruined building is just the appetizer. The Foundation sent in multiple exploration teams to figure out what happened inside. What they found was a nightmare factory, entire wings filled with the remains of anomalies that had been executed, dissected, or fed into some kind of massive dissolution system called the Pit. The facility had industrialized killing SCPs on a scale that makes normal Foundation ethics look downright cuddly, and here's where it gets genuinely terrifying. The things inside Site-13 aren't all dead. Some of the anomalies survived the collapse and are still active inside the ruins. Massive, hostile entities roaming through the wreckage with zero containment protocols. The exploration logs read like a horror movie where every room is worse than the last. One team encountered something called the Deer, which is exactly as calm and peaceful as it sounds. It isn't, at all. But the worst part isn't the monsters, it's what the alternate Foundation did to create them. They had been experimenting on, torturing, and executing humanoid SCPs, children included. The logs recovered from inside describe procedures so brutal that even the regular Foundation, an organization that routinely locks people in boxes forever, was horrified. The exploration teams kept finding evidence of mass termination events, bodies stacked in hallways, containment cells converted into execution chambers. Hey, what if we just killed everything? Cool, great, add that to the list. The Foundation's greatest containment site became the thing that needed containing. But if you think a haunted Foundation ruin is unsettling, wait until you see what Lamplight does to an entire city. SCP-505. Lamplight. Lamplight is a small town in the SCP universe that shouldn't exist. It doesn't appear on any official maps, no county records, no census data, no postal routes. But it's there, and it has people in it, and every single one of them is connected to a light source that nobody can explain. The town revolves around a single anomalous light. Not a lamp, not a bulb, just a light hanging in the center of town with no visible power source. It never turns off, it never flickers, and the residents worship it like it's the only thing keeping them alive, which, as it turns out, might actually be true. Here's where it gets weird. The people of Lamplight don't age normally. They don't leave. They don't want to leave. Anyone who enters the town starts feeling the same pull toward the light, this overwhelming sense that staying is the only rational decision. Foundation personnel sent in to investigate started refusing extraction. They'd radio back saying everything was fine, that they'd found something beautiful, that the light was warm, which is, you know, not ideal when your job is to contain anomalies and not join them. The light itself defies classification. It doesn't behave like any known electromagnetic radiation. It illuminates things that shouldn't be visible, casts shadows that move independently of their sources, and seems to respond to the emotional states of the people around it. One researcher described it as aware. Not intelligent, not sentient, just aware, like it knows you're looking at it. The town keeps growing too, slowly, quietly, but it's expanding. New buildings appear. New residents show up with no memory of arriving. The light gets a little brighter every year. That's why it's classified the way it is. This isn't a contained anomaly. It's a slow, patient invitation that nobody comes back from. But if a town you can never leave sounds bad, wait until you hear about the IKEA you can never leave. SCP-3008, a perfectly normal, regular old IKEA. This is probably the most famous alternate dimension in the entire SCP universe, and honestly, it deserves to be, because SCP-3008 isn't some eldritch void or cosmic nightmare realm. It's an IKEA, a seemingly infinite IKEA located in Sweden that looks completely normal from the outside. You walk in through regular front doors, and at some point, you just can't find the exit anymore, which is, you know, not ideal. The Foundation has sent multiple exploration teams inside, and the results are consistently terrible. The interior doesn't match any known floor plan. It just keeps going. Endless showrooms, kitchens, bedrooms, all laid out in ways that make zero architectural sense. The layout changes on its own, so mapping the place is basically impossible. You can't chart a path out when the path keeps rearranging itself behind you, but here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. The entities inside, designated SCP-3008-2, are humanoid figures that resemble IKEA staff. They wear the yellow shirts and everything. During store hours, they're passive, wandering around and occasionally mumbling phrases like "the store is now closed, please exit the building." But when the lights go off, simulating nighttime, they become extremely hostile and will attack anyone on sight. Everyone jokes about the infinite IKEA, but the quiet horror underneath is that every single night, the furniture store actively tries to kill you, and people are trapped in there. A recovered journal documents one person's long-term survival, describing an entire community of trapped civilians who've built settlements out of IKEA furniture. They fortify their camps every night, scavenge the food courts for supplies, and just try not to die when the lights go out. An entire society built from flat pack furniture and desperation. Some journal entries stop abruptly. I don't know what to tell you, but if an infinite furniture store where the staff try to murder you every night sounds manageable, the next dimension makes it look like a vacation. Because SCP-2935 doesn't trap you in a nightmare. It shows you what happens when everything just stops. SCP-2935. Oh, death. One dead Earth is a tragedy. One dead, everything is Tuesday at the Foundation. SCP-2935 is a cave. Not a magical cave, not a glowing portal. A limestone cave in Joplin, Missouri that contains a passage to a parallel Earth where every living thing is dead. Every single one. Not just humans, every animal, every plant, every bacterium, every SCP, all of it, dead. Instantaneously. No signs of struggle, no disease, no nuclear war. Everything just stopped on April 20th, 2016. This wasn't a slow collapse. It was a light switch, and the details get worse the longer you look. The Foundation sent Mobile Task Force Zeta-9 through to investigate, and what they found was a perfect copy of our world with zero life. The parallel Foundation sites were intact. Containment chambers still sealed. But everything inside them was dead too, including, and this is the part that should genuinely concern you, SCP-682, the unkillable lizard, the thing that has survived every termination attempt the Foundation has ever thrown at it. Dead, just lying there in its tank. Which is, you know, not ideal. Because if whatever did this could kill 682, it could kill anything. The exploration team found the Parallel 05 Council dead at their desks. Records indicated that version of the Foundation had discovered their own SCP-2935, sent their own team through, and found yet another dead Earth on the other side. A dead Earth inside a dead Earth. Turtles all the way down, except every turtle is a corpse. But here's where it gets dark. Our Foundation reached the same conclusion. Whatever kills everything appears to activate when someone crosses through. The exploration team may have already triggered it for our side, so O5 Command ordered SCP-2935 sealed with the task force still inside, buried alive to maybe save everyone else. The whole anomaly is a question with no safe answer. Look and die, or never know what's in the dark. But if one dead universe feels overwhelming, wait until you encounter a dimension where nothing exists at all, not even the concept of existence. SCP-3930, the pattern screamer. Every other dimension on this list exists in a place. This one exists in a feeling. SCP-3930 is a conceptual dimension generated by the collective unconscious of humanity itself, manifesting as a 4.7 billion square kilometer fractal landscape that physically reshapes itself based on what the human race is feeling at any given moment. Global anger triggers volcanic eruptions across its surface. Widespread joy grows crystalline forests out of nothing. The entire dimension is a mood ring the size of a continent, except the mood ring can kill you. At its core sits an entity designated SCP-3930-A, nicknamed the Screamer, which broadcasts raw human emotion as a physical force, steel-shattering intensity at 90 decibels, and time inside operates at a ratio of 1 second to 3.2 years in baseline reality, which is, you know, not ideal for anyone hoping to pop in and take notes. The Foundation tried exactly once. One incursion, total team loss. An agent started crying during observation, and his tears triggered a 7.8 magnitude earthquake made entirely of sorrow. A sorrow quake. One man's grief literally cracked the ground open. Turns out the atmosphere contains 0.03% mimetic particles that rewrite human DNA to match local emotional frequencies. So the moment that agent felt something, the dimension felt it right back at full volume. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. During the 2020 pandemic lockdowns, SCP-3930's landscape transformed into a luminous coral reef structure. That structure temporarily stabilized the Foundation's reality anchors, meaning human collective consciousness isn't just shaping this dimension, it's actively holding baseline reality together. Our feelings are load-bearing. That revelation broke the Foundation's entire playbook. The landscape regenerates 100% within 1.7 hours after any destruction, making it functionally indestructible. So they pivoted to something they almost never do: cooperation, working with the anomaly instead of against it, a dimension made of human emotion that you can't destroy, can't enter safely, and can't ignore because it's literally keeping reality from collapsing. But if you think that's a strange relationship between humanity and an alternate dimension, wait until you see what happens when a dimension actually likes us back. SCP-6001 Avalon. Underneath Glastonbury Tor, there's a 1.2 meter stone archway that does absolutely nothing 99.9% of the time. But during a lunar eclipse, it opens into a pocket dimension that might be the most dangerous anomaly the Foundation has ever documented. Not because it wants to kill you, because it wants you to stay. The dimension on the other side looks like Arthurian England, rolling green hills, medieval structures, a sky that looks like it was painted by someone who really loved this country. The atmosphere contains 217% the oxygen concentration of baseline reality, which sounds pleasant until you realize it means every piece of modern synthetic clothing, every plastic component, every nylon strap on your tactical gear will spontaneously combust the moment you step through. Hope you packed cotton. The ruling entity, SCP-6001-1, appears as King Arthur. Biometric analysis confirms a 97% match to 6th century genetic samples. But here's where it gets complicated. It's not one guy, it's a rotating council of historical British figures, and the throne passes based on what Britain needs at any given moment. During the Foundation's 2012 incursion, agents watched Winston Churchill hand the crown to a 15-year-old Elizabeth I, just casually. Like a shift change. The dimension doesn't run on physics, it runs on mythology. Time moves at a 1 to 365 ratio. 1 day inside equals 1 year outside, and the whole place sits 1,140 years behind our timeline. Leadership, geography, even the weather responds to narrative logic rather than natural law. The Foundation's 1978 incursion recovered an artifact called the Scabbard of Delay, which can negate K-class scenarios. That's world-ending events, just cancelled. But it caused temporal dementia in 100% of users, and 11 of the 15 agents on that mission were re-educated into the Dimension Society, they never came back. They chose not to. And Avalon isn't staying put. Spectral analysis shows it's leaking narrative energy at 0.3 terawatts, warping local history within 5 kilometers of Glastonbury. The mimetic particles have been designated matter of Britain. A nation's mythology is literally physically rewriting the reality around it. Stories aren't just stories in there. They're a force. They have mass. They reshape the ground you're standing on. 11 agents walked into a better story and decided the real world wasn't worth coming back to. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe they were right. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.